Hey everyone, my name is Alexandra and I am a watercolor artist. With the first day of spring coming up really quickly, I wanted to do a tutorial on how to paint a spring floral pattern. As you guys know, I love florals, so I'm super excited about this one. Let's get started. For supplies today, you guys will need 2 cups of water. I have one for clean, one for dirty water. A napkin for drying your paintbrushes. For paint, I'm using Philisophy and Co's Terrain watercolor palette. Really what I'm going for here is just some bright, fun spring colors. For paintbrushes, I have Opus Allegro's numbers 2, 4, and 8, sort of just looking for a small, medium, and large brush. And lastly, for paper, I'm using 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. I've taped my paper down just because I'm painting a floral pattern here, so it's nice to be able to go right to the edges and have a nice clean edge when you take the tape off. So first thing that we're going to do to start this painting, as I like to do with a lot of my floral patterns, is just lay down a base. For this, what we're going to do is paint some super light colored leaves underneath. So I specifically am going to use, I have my willow tree green right here. It's kind of mixed with a couple other colors right now, but I like that just because it's a really nice light sort of spring looking green. So I'm using my large paintbrush and we're just gonna start by painting some leaves sort of all across the page. So I'll start by drawing in the stems of where I'm going to put my leaves. So I ran out a bit of space there. So I did one starting from the center, sort of curving out. I'm going to do another one, kind of curving down to the other side. I'm going to do a big long branch coming all the way across, and then maybe just another little one coming into that corner. So as I go, if I feel that I need more, it's easy enough for me to add more, but I like to just lay that down so that I know where I'm putting everything that I'm painting. So we are going to paint some basic leaves. I'm going to start with this one on the right hand side here with my large paintbrush. I'm putting the tip of my paintbrush down and I'm just applying pressure as I pull back and doing sort of 2 kind of C curve shapes to fill in the full shape of my leaf. Now, what you guys will notice is the green paint is very light on this layer. At this point, you might be tempted to add more color to it, but I'm going to tell you to just leave it as it is because we are going to be layering lots of things right on top of it. And we just want to make sure to keep that first layer really nice. It's honestly just to add some more interest to our painting, but we don't want it to distract from what we put on top. So I'm painting leaves on either side of the branch here, and I'm trying to make sure that I sort of stagger them a little bit so that they're different from the right to the left side of that main stem. And I kind of have them not all pointing up or to the side, but pointing different directions. If you guys have watched any of my previous videos where I painted these leaves, that is one of the things that I often say is to just make sure that they're not all super stiff and uniform because that makes them look much less natural. So now that I've done that, I'm going to add tiny little stems to each leaf just to attach it to that main stem. And what you guys will notice that I did with this last leaf here is I actually just cut it off and painted right over the edge of where the tape is. When we take the tape off later, you'll see why I put the tape and why I like to cut things off on the edge, because it makes a really neat look, especially with this kind of surface pattern design. right, so now we're just gonna move on to our next branch, and we're just gonna keep following that exact same concept. All right, and now that I've painted all of that, I feel like I could maybe use another leaf or two up at the top here. So I'm just gonna stick in sort of a half branch right at the top there. And then I'm gonna do the same thing towards the bottom here. So just trying to fill in those white spaces so that it looks nice and full for when we add things on top. And as I look, I can kind of see another gap right on the left here. So we'll just do the exact same thing, and I'm just adding 3 little leaves in. All right, so I really like specifically the color green that was chosen here because it's such a nice soft color. So now that that is painted, you can see that it's just this very, very subtle pattern that we have across our whole page. So I'm just gonna let some of those leaves dry a little bit more, and then we're gonna go in and add our next layer of flowers. Okay, so now that that's dry, we're gonna go in and we're gonna add our first layer of flowers. So the first ones that I want to add in are just some blue flowers. I absolutely love seeing forget-me-nots, so we're gonna paint in some nice colorful blue flowers. So what I want you guys to do is, I'm still using my larger paintbrush, and scattered throughout my page, I'm going to paint these small blue flowers. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to paint 5 petals sort of in a circle shape, and then after we're going to add in a little yellow center. So super simple. You can see that my ovals that I'm putting together for the flowers are not really defined, but they're really nice and loose and just natural looking. I'm not too picky about how each one looks, but I'm also scattering them throughout my page, and I'm overlapping them with the leaves underneath. So as I add this layer, you can see why I would have chosen to paint the leaves super, super light underneath, because I want everything that's on top just to really stand out. And I'm just trying to make sure that I space them out throughout my whole page so that blue is kind of showing up everywhere. I'm going to add some sort of towards the edge along the tape line that look like they're half showing, half not. We'll do one more in this corner here, and then we will move on to our next flower. All right, so the next flower that we're going to paint in is some daisies. So I'm just going to clean my brush off, but I'm going to move down to my number 4 paintbrush for this one. And we're going to be painting some yellow daisies. So I'm going to go into my yellow paint, and for this one, if you guys want to draw a little circle with a pencil to know where the center of your flower is prior to painting, then feel free to do that. But this one we're just gonna paint sort of longer petals coming in towards the center. And again, they're kind of elongated, sort of teardrop type shapes, where I have them taper off a little bit as they come down towards what will be the center of the flower. And for these ones, it's not always so specific how many petals they have, so feel free to put more or less on them, but the idea is that we're doing kind of those longer, skinnier flower petals. And we're just gonna space them out. So my ones on the edge here, because I have the tape, it's easy for me to just continue painting as if I'm finishing the flower, but once we take the tape off, it'll be cut off there. I accidentally mixed my brush in with some brown paint that I had on there, so I'm just gonna go in and pick that up really quick. Okay, and I will cover that with some yellow. Okay, and while I'm painting with the yellow and have that on my brush already, I can now go back into my blue flowers and just add it to the center. So I'm doing a little cluster in the center and then kind of some dots just around. So cluster of yellow right in the center, and then I can do little dots around. Now I love this combination of yellow and blue because I find that it just makes the blue stand out so much more. All right, and as my yellow is drying, I can go in and paint the center of that. So I'm gonna sort of go with a bit of a brown black color. I don't have any on my palette right now, so I'm mixing a combination of blue, red, and a bit of yellow. And I'm just gonna do the same little cluster of dots in the center. All right, so we're going to add some more details to those flowers in a little bit, but I wanted to just really have fun with this painting and add some butterflies to it. I know that that's one of the things that as soon as spring comes and you start seeing things like flowers and all of that, often butterflies come along with it. So we are gonna paint just some really simple ones. I'm gonna start with this nice bright purple color. And what I'm doing for these is I'm going to paint the top wing. So I'm sort of doing the same idea as these petal shapes, but two right next to each other. And then I'm going to let that dry before painting the bottom part of the wings. So bear with me, it's gonna take a minute to look like it's coming together, but we're just gonna paint a few of those scattered throughout our painting. And you can kind of angle them a little bit more if you want. right, I'm just gonna add one more at the top here. I sort of got a bit of a blue spot of paint, so this is a perfect opportunity to use my butterfly to cover it up. All right, now as my first layers are drying, I can go over again with purple, and we're gonna add those bottom wings. So I'm doing, again, that same kind of teardrop shape, but this time I'm gonna angle it down. So the reason I like to layer it is because it's really nice to kind of get that separation of the top wings from the bottom ones. And you can kind of get that bit of a translucent look. Sort of had some brown in there, so we're just gonna mix it, get some more purple back in there. All right, so now as each of these ones dry, we can add sort of the center, the body of the butterfly. So I'm gonna use the same color that I used for the center of my daisies. So it's kind of this brown color that I've mixed. If you guys already have a brown paint, feel free to use that. And I'm just adding really loose, thin line down the center of each of them. And because this whole painting in general is just very loose, nothing is too defined. You don't need to worry about it being a perfect anatomically correct butterfly. We're just adding that little bit of fun and whimsical look to it. So I'm gonna switch now to my smaller paintbrush just because I want to add the little antennas. I'm just trying to mix some more of that brown color that I was using. And we can add in just really thin antennas on each one. Again, because I want this to have a really fun and whimsical look, I'm adding sort of a little bit of a curl to each one. And just have fun with this. If you guys want to do a bunch that are different colors, then go for it. All right, so now that that is done, we have what looks like already a really fun floral pattern on our page, but I wanna go in and I just wanna add some details and make things stand out. So at this point, if you guys are painting, you're welcome to leave it as is, but we're gonna go on to a little bit more of an advanced step and add some details to the butterflies and to each of the flowers. So we'll start first with our forget-me-nots, and I'm gonna start I'm just gonna clean off a section on my palette here because I want to have a bit of a clean section to add in my blue paint. I tend to let my palettes get very messy, but if I find that I'm really needing to use a certain color and everything's getting really muddy, then sometimes I need to clean it just to make sure, as I did earlier with the yellow where it turned brown, just to make sure I actually have space for the colors that I'm trying to use and paint. So I'm getting some really nice, highly pigmented blue paint onto my brush, and I'm going to go in to my flower. And what I want to do is I want to sort of outline the edge of it, and then I'm just going to bring that color down just by painting little lines coming down. Now once I've done that, I'm rinsing my paintbrush off to make it nice and clean. And I just want to give it instead a little bit of a fade. So to have that edge look nice and dark and kind of fade lighter as I come towards the center. The reason I want it lighter towards the center is because I want to make sure that that yellow paint still really stands out. So I'm just bringing that dark blue color down with little strokes, and then again cleaning my brush and just dragging the color out in to the rest of my petal. If I find at this step it gets a little bit too light and you can no longer see the difference, I can go back in with that darker paint and just let it sort of bleed in. One of the reasons that I like adding this step to my paintings, especially when I'm doing flowers in a floral pattern like this, is I want to make sure that that background is really subtle against the flowers, and the flowers are truly what is standing out. So this is a nice way to just go and add that extra definition to each of your flowers to make sure that they really pop and stand out. All right, so you guys have kind of seen what I've done with the first flower here. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with all of the rest of them. All right, so now that I've added more blue detail to those flowers, I'm going to go in and just add a tiny bit more yellow to the center of some of them where I feel like it dried a lot lighter and I just want it to stand out a bit more. So I'm just jotting in that yellow color. Most of them are good, but there's a few where I just feel like it could stand out some more. Okay, so already you could see what a difference that makes with how much they stand out. So now I'm gonna go in to my yellow daisies and we're just gonna add some simple detail with these. So I have, again, a higher pigmented yellow paint, and starting from the tip of the flowers, I'm just gonna bring my paintbrush down. So it was a little darker than I'd like in that one. So I'm just gonna take away some of the paint there. Add a little bit of water. And at this point, I want to be careful to either clean out my 1 cup of water or make sure that I'm rinsing it in the clean water after I've used the paint, just because I want to make sure that I'm not getting any blue into my yellow paint. Now I'm just going to follow the same concept with all of my petals. And again, the main focus with this is kind of giving it that really nice rounded point of the petal, and then just making them stand out and making sure that each petal definitely looks distinct and separated from the one that's right beside it. Now, as with sort of all of my pattern type paintings, this is one thing where it's fully up to the painter to decide how much or how little you want to add in your painting. So with something like this that's sort of more spring florals, I could add as many or as few florals as I want. But if you guys are painting this, the main thing that you want to just be focusing on and paying attention to is that you're spacing everything out really nice and evenly, because that's the biggest thing with patterns. You want to make sure that it's not everything clustered in one corner and the rest of the painting is nothing and is really empty. So that's why, as you guys can see, when I paint these, I often make sure to paint one thing at a time and just space everything out throughout the whole painting. So if I wanted, even with this painting, there's definitely more room to add, where if I wanted to add a red or a pink flower in, I definitely could. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm gonna leave it as it is because I really like the combination of the yellow, blue, and purple paints together. So the nice thing about these flowers is that because we're just going for that really loose and effortless look, I can add details and definition kind of however I want. So this way obviously isn't a necessarily hyper realistic way to do it, but I love just the contrast that it gives to my flowers and how it makes them stand out so much more. So what I might do with some of these is put my paintbrush in clean water and just soften up that color a little bit, but I don't need to do this quite yet. I can wait until I'm done adding details to all of my petals. Okay, so now that that's done, rinse my paintbrush off, first in my dirty cup of water, second in my clean. Again, like I said, this is somewhere where it is actually more important because I don't want to get any blue into my yellow, but I'm just gonna wet my paintbrush and just sort of pull a little bit of that color down. I still like this look of the lines, but I just want to soften them up just a touch so that it's not such harsh edges. So I'm just using my paintbrush to kind of carry that color through a little bit better. And it just gives it a really nice effect. All right, so now that we've done that, we want to deal with the center of these flowers. So I'm going to go in and again mix sort of a brown color of paint. And this time I'm trying to keep it more pigmented than I had it before because I want to add some really dark details. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be layering on top of where I've already painted, but I'm trying to focus just on the edges to kind of make it look like it's shaded and like it's a little bit more 3D. So it's a bit tricky when I started with sort of a darker color of paint already, but what I can do is I can go and I can rinse my paintbrush, and what I'm going to do is add just a tiny dot of paint onto each one, kind of at the top corner there. I'm gonna let it sit for just a second, and then I'm gonna go in with my paintbrush and try to pick up some of that color. So just giving it that kind of shadow as if maybe the light is shining on it, gives it a bit more of that 3D shape. And you can see the difference that that makes. So now, last thing that we have to touch up is our butterflies. So first I want to focus on the center of them. I'm going to mix brown with a tiny bit of yellow. And with sort of more of a yellow gold color, I'm just gonna go back into the body of each one and just add a little bit more color to them. And I can focus on doing kind of two ovals that are attached to each other to give it that little bit more shape. And now with this darker brown color that I've painted, I can, using the very, very tip of my brush, go over the little curly antennas that I made. All right, and now for the wings, we're just gonna give them a bit more definition. So this first one that I painted, I'm gonna leave it as it is because it actually dried really nicely. Some of these down here, I didn't quite wait for my paint to dry enough, so that is okay. We'll just go in and add another layer of color. So what I'm doing here is I'm painting sort of that outside circle with my paint that's a little bit darker. And then I'm gonna wet my brush, dry it off, and just kind of pull that color in to the center. So I want to be careful to not paint them too dark because I want to keep that semi-translucent look. So again, I'm just adding details to the outside, that darker paint color, and then with my wet brush, I'm just pulling the color into the center. So as you guys have noticed, I use this technique quite a bit when I'm trying to add more shading, depth, dimension to my paintings, because it's a way to, first of all, have a decent amount of control over your paints as you're painting with them. And second of all, it's just a nice way to add some shading and color sort of once you've already painted that base and you find that it just needs that little bit of extra contrast. So again, for all of these, I'm leaving the top part of the wings and I'm only adding the detail to the bottom just because I want that contrast to stand out a little bit more. Okay, and there you have a spring floral pattern. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you followed along, please do take a picture. I would love to see what flowers you chose to paint, how you decided to put it together. And if you guys have anything else that you want to learn in the future, I know spring is coming up. I'm hoping to do some wildflower videos again. Leave a comment below, let me know. If you haven't already, like this video and subscribe to this channel. See you next time.